Hello everyone, this is George with the Paper Panda Crafts. I am back with another video, and today's video is going to be a tutorial video on how to make the larger version of my Notepad planner combo. So if you'd like to see what I do, then go ahead and just keep watching. Alright guys, so my audio might be a little off today because my microphone had a terrible buzzing noise, so I am doing a voiceover, so might be a little different. So, like I said, we're going to be making the larger version of my Notepad planner combo. As you can see in the pictures, I've made smaller ones, and I have a video making the smaller ones, which will be linked in the description box, and I'll probably have a card pop up in the video too. So, I went to the Dollar Tree and I found these larger 2021 planners, and they're a full year planner. They're not a student planner, which is one thing to be careful of when you're looking for planners. If you want to make a regular year-long planner, make sure you're not getting a student planner. A student planner only goes from, I think, September until the following September, I think. If you're making a planner for a student, then by all means, use a student planner. But if you're making a planner for the full year, then make sure you're getting a full year's planner. That's just one thing to be aware of. Dollar Tree has a lot of student planners right now. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this project, we are going to be using chipboard. I'm going to be using doubled up chipboard, just as a personal preference because I want this to be nice and sturdy. I'm just using doubled up medium weight chipboard. When you're making this, don't have to. You can use a single sheet or stacked up cereal box or shoebox cardboard would probably work too. But just me as a personal preference, I'm using doubled up chipboard because this is a larger project and I want it to be nice and sturdy. So if somebody wants to open it up and write in it, they will have that sturdiness to hold it in their hands and write in it without having to set it on a hard surface. So yeah. So the chipboard that I'm using measures 7 by 9 3/4, and I have two pieces of that doubled up chipboard. And then I have a spine piece that measures 1/2 inch by 9 3/4, and that is doubled up as well. We're also going to be using one of the writing tablets from the Dollar Tree, and I believe those are 8.5 by 5. And then we have our planner that I've already covered in tape, just because I'm sure that you do not want to watch me lay tape. And then we have our shelf liner that I'm going to be using. So I'm using shelf liner just because I can get one large continuous sheet, and I know you're probably asking if shelf liner is already sticky, why are you using tape? I'm choosing to use tape just because shelf liner, it's not a permanent stick. It's meant to be pulled up and repositioned or pulled up and thrown away and replaced. So I want to make sure that it sticks good and permanent to whatever I'm putting it on. So I have my large piece that I'm going to be using for the jacket, and then I have some smaller pieces that I'll be using to cover the planner and the top of the notepad. And I've also got some 12 by 12 sheets of cardstock that I will be using to create the inside liner. And I'll be joining those together, so I will have a little bit of a seam, but it'll be on the inside. So like I said, I have tape already placed on my planner, and whenever I put tape on my planners or whatever I'm covering, I always want to put it longer than the actual thing that I'm covering, just so that way I don't have to get it perfectly to the edge, and then I'll just go along and trim off the excess as I'm doing here. And then I'll usually wrap around the back side, or the spine side, because I'm going to wrap around the paper probably about a quarter of the way or a third of the way to the back, if that makes any sense. Just because I want the spine to be covered, but I'm not going to cover the entire back because it's not going to be seen. You're going to be gluing it down. So I'm just trimming off my excess tape and making sure that everything is nice and clean, and then I will go along and pull up the backing on my tape. So I've got the backing pulled up, and I'm only pulling it off to the spine just so that way the tape that's on the back does not stick to my cutting mat and end up either being pulled off the planner or ripping the planner, or it can just be a pain in the butt. So I just peel it to that point there. And those little strips are getting on my nerves, so I'm just going to cut them off and throw them in the trash. I don't know why I didn't do it to begin with, but yeah, they were working my nerves. So I've got that all cleared off, and now I'm going to lay my piece of contact paper after I struggle to take off the backing. So once I get the backing off, I will position the notepad or the planner to lay the contact paper on. So after fiddling around with it for a little bit, I found that laying it this direction works the best for me to get the front of this covered. I don't know why. I tried doing it from the opposite direction. It just felt like it was not going to lay down correctly. So doing it like this, it just felt like it was going to go down smoothly, and so I went with it. So do it however you like, whatever works for you. So it's on there. I'm just going to clear out any kind of air bubbles, which I really didn't get any air bubbles throughout this entire project, so I'm really happy about that. So that's always a good thing. Don't have to worry about that. So now I'm just going around and trimming off my excess. And the good thing about this shelf liner, or I guess really any shelf liner, is that it always cuts so smoothly. Sometimes you have to kind of wonder if you're actually cutting it at all. So once I have the excess cut off, I'm just going to check it to make sure I don't have any little extra flaps. And there's one little piece sticking out here, and I got it. And now I'm going to peel up the remaining bits of tape off the back of the planner. So that way I can go ahead and wrap around the extra piece of shelf liner to cover the spine. So now that I have the tape backing removed, I can go ahead and cover it with the shelf liner, contact paper, whatever you want to call it, and just making sure it's all nice and stuck. And now I'm just going to check it and make sure I don't have any little overlapping pieces or any excess hanging off, and I do just have a little bit. It's nothing major, and just going to cut it off and get all the edges cleaned up. And just by adding that shelf liner to this planner, to me it already looks a million times better than the pattern that was on there. If you want to use the pattern that's on there, go for it. If you have paper or things that will match it, go for it. Use that pattern. But just be aware that that paper that they're using as a cover is very, very flimsy. So adding something to it, like paper and tape and things like that, really adds some strength and durability. So now I'm going to go ahead and add a pocket to the inside of this planner, because that's one thing my little versions of this lack, is a pocket. Because the planner that I usually use is so small, it really doesn't make sense to put a pocket inside of it. I mean, I guess I could, but I just don't. So I'm just measuring to see how much or how wide of a pocket I'll need and how tall I want to make it. And I believe it is 7 inches by 4 inches that I'm going to make the pocket. And I'm just using a piece of scrap paper that I had from when I was making Christmas photo boards. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll probably see them in the next couple days posted there. I made some Halloween ones already. So I'm just going to trim down this piece of scrap, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and line it with some contact paper, and I'm going to go ahead and add some tape to the paper before I lay the contact paper on it. So as you can see, I have my tape laid on my paper, and I'm going to go ahead and peel that final piece off. And again, because I want it to really stick, and it would probably stick okay to the paper, but like I said, I want it to be a good permanent stick, and I don't want it to end up peeling or bubbling up. So I've got my tape peeled, and I'm just going to lay it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be trimming it down, and because this isn't like a directional pattern, even if it's crooked, it's still going to look fine. So don't worry about getting it too perfect. If you are using a directional pattern, then be a little bit more careful. But now that I've got it stuck down, I'm going to use my new trim and scoreboard. And by the way, that scoreboard is still doing great. I still love it. And I will link the comparison video in the description box, and a card will probably pop up around now. So you can check that video out if you'd like. I just compare the old version and this new version. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off any excess pieces that are hanging off just to get it straight. Alright, so now that I've got my excess pieces trimmed off, I'm just going to cut it down to the measurements that I took, which was 7 by 4 1/4. And the reason I'm doing the 4 1/4 by 7 is because I want to do a gusseted pocket, so I'm going to do a 1/4 inch score on the 2 short sides and one of the long sides. So I just get the scoring part flipped over and get my bone folder, and I'm going to do my 1/4 inch score. And I like doing gusseted pockets. Personal preference, if you don't want to do a gusset, you don't have to. You can just take the paper on its own and glue it down around the edges just to create your pocket, but I like having gusseted pockets just so that way you can fit more inside of it. Again, it's personal preference. Alright, so now that the scoring is done, I'm just going to get my scissors and cut off the little corner pieces, just so that way when I fold the sides in, I won't have a bunch of bulk. So it's basically a quick little miter cut. And if you don't get them perfect and they don't line up perfectly, do not worry about it. It's just so that way we create the pocket. You know, nobody's going to see this part. This is going to be glued down. It's just to give the pocket some extra room and extra space. That's all it's for. So nobody's going to see it if it doesn't perfectly match up. So I'm just using my spatula to get these nice and folded. When you're doing your scoring and your burnishing, you might have to apply a little bit of extra pressure just because you are going through not only the paper, but you're having to score through tape and the shelf liner. So apply a little bit of extra pressure just to make sure you get good scores and burnishes. But don't be too rough, because this shelf liner, because it is kind of plasticky, might have a tendency to like stretch out. So All I'm doing here is I'm just applying my glue to those 1/4 inch foldovers, and you don't want to put too much because you don't want the glue to ooze out and seal your pocket shut. So now I'm just placing it down, and placing pockets with a gusset can be a little tricky, especially when the folds don't want to stay folded over. It can be a little tricky to get one down. It seems like when you get one down, the other one pops up, you get that one pushed down, the other one pops back up. So it can be a little tricky. But I finally got it. Everything's down and everything's glued, so now I can use my spatula and really work that glue in and make sure everything gets nice and stuck. So like I said, don't put too much glue because you don't want it to seep out and end up gluing your pocket shut, and then you just have a useless pocket. Alright, so now that our planner is done, we're going to go ahead and cover the top part of our notepad. So I went ahead and cut off the cover of the notepad because we don't need it, and I'm just going to cover the top with some 2-inch tape, or you can use whatever tape you'd like. So I'm just going to get a good length of tape, and I'm just going to line it up with just the edge of that black top. And once I get it lined up, I will stick it down and make sure it's nice and stuck, and then I will just snip off. I don't know, I was trying to cut it that way. I will just snip off the edge, and it's fine to have a little bit of extra because we're just going to trim it off. It's just easier to trim it with the X-Acto knife or finger blade, whatever you happen to be using. To cut an exact piece of tape and then try to lay it perfectly, it's, to me, I've tried it and I've failed every time. So I just always cut it longer, and then I will cut off the excess. And then I'm just folding it over the back, get it nice and stuck, and cut away the excess of the fold over. Just a little sliver, and I think the other side is fine. Nope, just kidding. Had a little sliver hanging off there too. So, and because I don't want this little top part to come off, and I'm just showing how I went a little deep when I cut off the top. I went a little deep with my finger blade. But because I don't want that top coming up, I'm going to add a little bit of glue underneath just to stick it down. So there we go. A little bit more. And get it all nice and stuck. So now I can peel up my tape backing eventually. Come on. Come on, there we go. And get it peeled up, and I'm going to peel it up just to the bottom edge, just so that way it doesn't stick to my table. Just like the planner, I don't want it sticking to my table, my cutting mat, while I'm doing this. So now I'm going to take the piece that we cut for the top of the notepad and peel the backing off and get it stuck down. And just try to get it lined up as best you can, and once you get it lined up, just stick it down, and then you can go ahead and pick it up and peel off the back and get it folded over. You know, doing this voiceover, I feel like I'm telling myself what to do, because I'm saying it and then I'm doing it on the video. So anyway, it's just weird. So anyway, but back to the tutorial. So now I'm just cutting off any excess that hangs over, which it wasn't very much. So get everything nice and stuck, get your edges nice and creased, get your top nice and stuck, and there we go. Now we have the second piece to our Notepad Planner combo. So now we can go ahead and put together the jacket of this thing. So I'm going to be using the largest piece of shelf liner that we cut, and this measures approximately 18 inches long by, I want to say, 10 inches tall. And once I get the backing peeled, when you first cut it, it's going to roll up on itself. But once you get the backing peeled, it lays nice and flat, so you won't have to worry about it rolling up and sticking to itself. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off the tape off of my larger pieces of chipboard. And now that I've got the backing peeled off, I'm going to go ahead and stick it down, leaving myself about 3/4 of an inch from the top, side, and bottom, just so that way I can do my wraparound and get it all nice and stuck. And then I will lay my spine piece. Now when you're laying your pieces down, if you're using doubled up chipboard like I am, you're going to want to give yourself a little bit of extra space, more than the normal 1/8 of an inch, just because this is thicker and you want to give yourself extra room for it to fold, because otherwise if they're butted up too closely together, when they go to fold, it either won't fold all the way or it will want to stretch and tear whatever you've just put it on. And that's just never good. So just make sure to give yourself a little bit of extra space. I usually go not as much as a 1/4, but a little over 1/8. So whatever the measurement between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch is, that's about how much I do. It's not an exact measurement, I just eyeball it, but that's about what it is. So now that I've got my spine piece laid, I'm going to lay my other piece, and using the same spacing, and get that stuck down. And once I get it stuck down, I'm going to go ahead and trim off the extra shelf liner, just because I wanted to have a little bit more. I'd rather have too much than not enough. So I'm going to go ahead and get that trimmed off. That way I can go ahead and do my wraparound. So I went ahead and placed 1-inch tape all the way around, and I've already peeled up the backing. And I went ahead and placed 2-inch tape in the middle, so that way when I lay my liner sheet, I'll be ready to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do the miter cuts on the corners, so that way I can get the wraparound done. And same thing when you're doing the miter cutting, leave a little bit extra because we're going to be covering thicker chipboard if you're using doubled up chipboard like I am. If you're not, then you can do your miter cuts as normal. But using doubled up chipboard, you want to go ahead and leave a little bit of extra. So now that we got our miter cuts done, we're going to go ahead and get this folded over. Now when you're folding over this shelf liner, because it is a little plasticky and stretchy, when you're pulling it to do the fold over, don't pull it too hard, because what I've found is that it likes to pucker. And if you pull it and it puckers, it's going to show on the front and it just doesn't look great. And once it's stuck, there's no going back. It's stuck. And if you try to pull it up, it's just going to stretch it out even more, and you're going to have to start all over. So it's a learning process, but that's just what I've found using this on other projects. So I've got my top and bottom done, and I'm just making sure it's all nice and stuck. And get your edges all nice and squared off. And for those of y'all wondering, I got this shelf liner on Amazon actually. If I can find it, I will link it in the description box. I don't know if it's on there anymore, or if it is, it's probably maybe more expensive. I remember after I bought it, the price went up on it. I'm not sure why, but I'll try to find it. So now that I've got my top and bottom done, I'm going to fold over my sides. If you have any little extra, I just fold them in, kind of like when you're wrapping a Christmas present, and tucking in those little edges, and I can fold in this other side here. And like I said, just be careful, don't pull too tight because you don't want it to start to pucker. Alright, now I'm just squaring off my edges, making sure everything's nice and stuck, using my spatula, and everything looks good. Alright, and there we go. We've pretty much finished the outside of our book jacket. So now we just have to lay the inside liner, which that's where the larger 12 by 12 pieces come in. So I'm going to go ahead and get these joined together because one piece of 12 by 12 is not going to cut it. So all I'm going to do to join them is I'm just going to use some 1/4 inch double-sided tape and run it the entire length and get these two pieces stuck together. Alright, so now that I've got the two pieces lined up, I can go ahead and stick it down and get everything nice and smooth. And now I just have to trim down this paper to fit inside the book, which I believe the liner was 14.5 by 9.25. Alright, so now that I've got my liner piece cut down, I just need to get it glued on the back. And when I lay it down, I'm going to make sure to put the seam under my planner because the planner is going to cover up the entire thing. So I'm going to put the seam on the left side as you're looking at it. If you put it on the other side, the notebook will cover most of it, so it's not the end of the world. So if you do, not a big deal. And even if you do, just flip it around. If you're not using a directional pattern, just flip it around. So problem solved. So I'm just removing my tape backing, and I'm going to add glue to all my edges, making sure to really get the corners, and that way everything will get nice and stuck. Alright, and so moment of truth, lay down the liner sheet, get it as straight and centered as we can, and I'm just taking my time making sure everything lines up, because once it's stuck, and that looks pretty good. Get it all nice and smoothed out, grab my napkin and get any kind of seepage of glue soaked up, get everything nice and spread out, and then I will go over this with my bone folder, or actually my spatula, to get everything nice and smoothed out and get the glue nice and worked in. Now, because this is shelf liner, and like I said, it's got a little bit of a plasticky texture to it, the glue will take a little bit more time to adhere. So when you fold it, you are going to get some puckering of, some bubbling in the spine area, but that's to be expected. So just let it dry and make sure you get your glue nice and worked in and really work your spine area. Alright, so the glue has dried enough to where I can handle it and fold it and everything is nice and stuck. I don't have any more bubbling in the spine area, and now I'm going to basically just put all the pieces together now. So we have all of our pieces to our Notepad planner combo. I'm going to go ahead and include a pin. This is a gray glitter gel pen because who doesn't love a glitter gel pen? And I'm going to be using one of my elastic pen loops, and I will go ahead and link these in the description box. I use these because, like I said in another video, I'm bad at making pen loops. So I found those on Amazon, and they're great. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I want these things, and then go ahead and add my glue. And just use a good amount of glue all around the edges. If you want to use tape, that would probably work too, just as well. I'm just using glue just because. And if you are using glue, just make sure to give yourself good coverage, paying good attention to your corners and your edges, and missed a spot on the corners. And then once you got your coverage, you can go ahead and stick it down. I like using glue because it gives you that little bit of time to make adjustments. It gives you some wiggle room. So you can lay it down and then you can kind of move it before it sets up, and you can move it into place. Whereas if you use tape, you better be sure that that's where you want it. Because once you stick it down with tape, it's stuck. There's no going back. So using glue, I've just found works better because you can just move it around if you need to. So once you get it stuck down, just use your bone folder to get everything nice and spread out. Work the glue into the paper and get the glue nice and spread out. Paying special attention to the edges and corners. Get that glue really worked into those areas, that way they don't come up. And there we go. Our planner is nice and stuck, and while the glue is setting up on that, we will go ahead and attach our notepad. And I'm just going to lay it down and see where I want to put it. And this notepad actually works pretty good with this planner. I thought that it was going to be a little too small, but it's actually just right. So I'm going to go ahead and see where I want to place my pen loop. And that looks like a good spot there. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip over my notepad and peel the backing off of the pen loop and get it stuck. I don't know why I'm trying to do it this way first. I should just flip it over like I said, but I will learn here in a second, and I will flip it over. There we go. So now that I've got it flipped over, I've got my pen loop stuck. Now I can add my glue. Again, paying special attention to the corners and the edges, and just get glue everywhere. Be careful though when you are sticking it down if you do have glue leaking out of the sides. Get it soaked up quick because you don't want it to get onto the pages of your notepad. And one more dot. There we go. Just for the heck of it. So we got our notepad all covered with glue, and now we're just going to stick it down and get it positioned where we want. And that looks good to me. So same thing, we're going to lift up the pages of the notepad and get the glue nice and spread out and worked into the paper. That way it can start to set up and do its thing. Paying special attention to the edges and the corners, and then make sure no glue is leaking out of the sides, which I didn't see any. And then we can just put our pen in the pen loop, and there we go. Our book is done, and now we get to decorate it. So to decorate it, I'm just going to kind of keep it simple. I'm going to use some Project Life cards that I found actually at the Dollar Tree. I've found some pretty good stuff from Project Life at the Dollar Tree. I've I've never seen Project Life stuff at the Dollar Tree before, so when I saw these, I honestly thought somebody dropped it. I thought somebody left it there. But when I looked up, I saw a few other things from Project Life, and you better believe I snatched them all up. There wasn't too many, there was like two or three things, but I was just like, oh my god. So I grabbed them all up, and yeah, Project Life stuff at the Dollar Tree. So look around. They're just kind of in random spots, so just look around. But this is a Project Life cards that I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one that says, and then this happened. But I don't want the lines on the bottom, so I'm going to trim them off. And then I'm going to use this gold and white one for the inside of the planner. And then I'm going to use this one that says, do more of what makes you happy, to put on the outside of the Notepad planner combo book, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off those lines, and I will put them to the side because I'll find something to use them on. So I'm just going to use my corner rounder just to round off those corners that I just trimmed. And that looks about the same. And it's a little different, but it's not noticeable, so I'm not worried about it. And I'm going to go ahead and take these things, and I'm going to go ahead and run them through my Xyron, just because it'll be easier than gluing them and waiting for it to adhere to the shelf liner. So yeah, it'll just be easier. If you don't have a Xyron, then of course use glue, or if you have tape runner, you can use that too. I happen to have a Xyron, and I figure I might as well use it because I spent money on it, so I might as well get some use out of it. So I'm just cranking them through there, and cut it off. And whenever I do use my Xyron, even though it goes through those rollers to get everything smashed down into the adhesive, I still flip it over and use my bone folder or spatula, whatever I have, to really just get everything nice and smoothed out to make sure that that adhesive really sticks to the back. Because I've had it one time where I peeled it off, and a big piece of like a big part of it didn't get any adhesive. It was still stuck on the paper. So I don't know what happened there, but I've only had it happen once. And then when you're peeling things off, it's better to peel the paper away from whatever you're trying to get off of it. Because if you peel the thing off of the paper, it's going to curl up on you. So it's just better to peel the paper away from what you're doing. And now I'm just going to get this centered as best I can. It's not exact, I'm just eyeballing it. And there we go. And I am using permanent adhesive in my Xyron, so once that thing is stuck, it's stuck for good. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the one on the inside of the planner, just above the pocket. And I love these huge Project Life cards just because, you know, if you want to do something big like this, you have, you know, you can take up an entire page and make it look pretty in just one shot. Alright, and so now for the outside, I'm going to use the card that says, do more of what makes you happy. And again, I'm going to get it as centered as I possibly can. And I'm just eyeballing it. So that looks good. And there we go. Our project is finished. I'm very happy with the way this came out. It is so sturdy, and this shelf liner is so beautiful. And we have our planner on the inside with our pocket, and we have a full year planner to fill in with hopefully plans and events for 2021. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you to all of my subscribers. Um, if you happen to make this, go ahead and post it on your Instagram and tag me. I am at the Paper Panda Crafts, and so that way I can see what y'all do. And of course, don't forget to like the video if you like what you saw. And most importantly, if you're not subscribed yet, then why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to turn on the bell notification. That way it lets you know whenever I upload a new video. So thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!